Hey guys, what's up? My name is Zach, and today we're going to be doing a 2018 Senate election prediction. So it's now a month before the 2018 midterms occur, and there have been a number of updates in a number of the Senate races throughout the United States. If most of you have been looking at the polls, you can probably infer that the Democrats now have a sharper lead in a number of races, particularly in key races such as Florida, Michigan. Their leads have increased, a number of races, and I'd say overall the Democrats' odds of winning in the Senate have gone up drastically. However, there are some Senate races where they're currently underperforming, and we're going to see how that would play out in the race, hypothetically, in the scenario. So let me just switch over to safe. So overall, as I've said repeatedly in my past Senate prediction videos, this has been an uphill climb for the Democrats from day one. If you're just looking at the Senate races that they have to compete in, it's very difficult and arduous for them to win a majority at all. It's remarkable that they're doing this well in general. If it wasn't for just the energy on the Democrat side and the fact that Trump is the incumbent president, I think the Republicans will probably do much better. In fact, I think that the Republicans in this prediction should be winning at least 4 seats, but they're not, because obviously there's factors such as Trump, there's factors such as the energy on the Democrat side, the progressive movement, and just a number of factors on the Democrat side that make this more balanced towards them. So to start off, I'm going to call Michigan safe in the Democrats column. And this is because if we're looking at the polls, I'm not just going by polls, by the way, this is obviously polls are going to be a big factor in this prediction, but it won't be the factor. But in Michigan, as we've been seeing, Debbie Stabenow has been doing remarkably well against John James. She's now leading by, I think, over 20 points in the last poll. And John James was shown off by the conservative media as being their candidate, as being the candidate to make this race in a pretty Democratic state Republican. But we're not seeing that. We're seeing John James underperforming very much. I think that, me personally, I think that John James is a great candidate. I think that he is a very good, especially a very good Republican candidate. He's African American. He has a military background. He's a small business owner. He has everything that the Republicans would want in a candidate, and yet he is underperforming very, very much against Debbie Stabenow, the incumbent Democrat. And for those reasons, I would list this state solidly in the Democrats' column, moving it from likely to solid for my last prediction. I forgot to fill in safe GOP states. My apologies. So the safe GOP states would be the same ones I listed safe in my last prediction: Utah, Wyoming, and Mississippi's at large. Nebraska and Mississippi special district, or special election, I would both list likely in the Republicans' column. And this is because in Nebraska, Deb Fischer does have a low approval, and Jane Raybould could absolutely use that to her benefit. And one thing that I neglected to take into consideration in my last prediction when I called this seat safe in the Republicans column is that Trump's approval here is very low. It went down last month, as I covered in my analysis of the polls for the month of August. And I think it's going to go in the Republicans column, but I think that there is a chance the Democrats could win, and for those reasons I would list it likely. Same with Mississippi. We're seeing a 3-person race here between 2 Republicans and one very well-known, or relatively well-known Democrat, Mike Espy, the former agriculture secretary under Barack Obama. I think he does have a mild chance in this state, but it's nothing significant and nothing that would push it any more than likely, which I think, me personally, think that's generous, but with those factors taken into consideration, I would call this likely in Cindy Hyde-Smith column. Going over to likely Democratic seats, I list Pennsylvania likely in the Democrats column. We're seeing Bob Casey having a very strong lead over Lou Barletta. Lou Barletta has primarily ran on Trump's approval and hoping that it would really... I think he made a gamble by making Trump a big part of his campaign in a state where Trump's approval is low, and it has not been paying off for him so far, and for that reason Bob Casey has been leading, and I think he would continue to lead into November, and I think that he will win. One state that I accidentally listed as solid is New Jersey, which I did list solid in my last prediction, but this time I'm going to list it likely. Bob Menendez does have a very low approval overall in this state, considering it's a Democratic state. And Bob Hugin definitely has been... I believe Bob Hugin has been... I think it's Hugin. I have a lot of issues with mispronouncing names in Senate predictions, but Bob Hugin is... I'm going to call him Hugin. Hopefully that's the correct pronunciation, has been outraising Bob Menendez, which is significant for a Republican running in a typically safe blue state. However, I would still list it likely in the Democrats' column. I highly doubt that Bob Menendez would lose this state, which has been rapidly trending Democratic overall. Minnesota, that special election, I would list likely in Tina Smith's column. Tina Smith has been leading by 5 to 4, going up to 6 points in polls, and overall, this special election has been likely in our column from day one. I think that Republicans don't really have a very good chance at winning this seat, considering that the state is pretty much in the Democrats' column overall, including that special election. So likely in the Democrats' column. Ohio, I would list likely in the Democrats' column. Early on, the Republicans did think that there was a possibility at winning this seat. However, that possibility has completely and totally just been non-existent as of now. The Democrats, Sherrod Brown has been pulling up very good poll numbers and has been significantly outraising his competitor in this race, who has also been relying chiefly on Trump's approval, and that has not been going very well for him. Sherrod Brown overall has a very good approval in this state for a Democrat in a leaning red state, and for those reasons, I would list it likely in Sherrod Brown's column. Going on to West Virginia, I'm going to list this likely in the Democrats' column, which is a prediction that many people will probably disagree with. However, Joe Manchin has been making it a very big point of his campaign. Arguably, the main point of his campaign is Obamacare and protecting people with pre-existing conditions, which his competitor Patrick Morrisey has not been doing very well at combating, or at least arguing his side on. And Joe Manchin has been doing very well in this state for that reason. He separated himself entirely from the Democratic Party. I think the only chance that the Republicans have, which is a good chance, I mean, they have a good chance at winning this seat, but Joe Manchin has managed to separate himself entirely from the Democratic Party and has really made himself an independent despite having a D next to his name. And for those reasons, I would list this seat likely in the Democrats' column. Montana, I would also list likely in the Democrats' column. Although polls have been narrowing between Jon Tester and Matt Rosendale, I do believe that Jon Tester's solid approval in this state, especially as a Democrat, his solid approval in this state will allow him to prevail against Matt Rosendale. And in general, I don't think Matt Rosendale is a great candidate for the Republicans to run. I think that if the Republicans had a better candidate, someone who is more well known, someone who has better name recognition, if they nominated someone like that who has more of those things than Matt Rosendale does, this state would become a lot more competitive. However, Jon Tester is much more well known. He has the incumbency advantage, obviously, and I think that he would win this seat and win himself another term. Going over to Nevada, we're switching over to leans now. I would list Nevada leaning in Jackie Rosen's column. Polls have been razor thin between Dean Heller and Jackie Rosen. However, we have seen this state trend more towards the Democrats overall. It was a Democratic state to start out with, but it's been trending more towards the Democrats. It does have a low approval of Trump. Dean Heller has not done enough to separate himself from Trump overall, and I think that'll in the end be the one thing that costs him, or the main reason that costs him the state in general. And I think that Jackie Rosen will pick up a victory in the state. Going down to Texas, I'm going to list this state leaning in Ted Cruz's column. This state has been the most interesting out of every other state in this election so far. Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke have been battling each other for months now. It's drifted out of each other's column rapidly. First it was leaning or even tilting in Ted Cruz's column to start out with. Then it went back likely in Ted Cruz's column. Now it's going back into leaning. I'm almost tempted to call it tilting, but not enough polls haven't been released yet, and Ted Cruz has regained a pretty solid lead in polling. And in general, I think that the state has tremendous potential to switch to the Democrats, and I think that Beto O'Rourke has done a tremendous job at campaigning in this state. He has done exceptionally well overall, just through his use of social media, just through his appeal to Texans. And I do think that this state will be very competitive. I do think that it will come down to a very close margin. And I think the Republicans should be scared that this state is as close as it is. Because I've said this in the past. If Republicans lose this state in a presidential election, they lose the entire election overall. There's not a single likely scenario in which Republicans can lose Texas and win the election as well. There's not a single likely scenario for that to happen. And the fact that this election is as close as it is should be a warning sign for them in that regard. Also, I forgot to fill in New Mexico. That'd be safe in the Democrats' column. Going over to North Dakota, I think we're switching into tilt now. I'm going to list this state tilting in the Republicans' column, as I had in my last prediction as well. And I just realized I forgot to fill in Wisconsin. I'm going to go back to that state in a minute. But North Dakota, I would list tilting in Kevin Cramer's column. Really not a whole lot has changed here. I think the tariffs have been a factor in the past few months in this state, which have made it more and more likely in Heidi Heitkamp's column. And Heidi Heitkamp has pulled off better polling numbers recently. However, I think that Kevin Cramer will take the state from her. She won very narrowly in her last election, and the likelihood of her pulling off the same narrow victory is very slim overall. And I think that Kevin Cramer has been doing fine in general in the state. And I think that his name recognition as a at-large representative in the state will do him very well. And I would call this state tilting in the Republicans' column. I think they'll be close, but I think that Kevin Cramer will edge it out. Now Wisconsin, which I forgot to call. I'm going to list likely in the Democrats' column. Tammy Baldwin has been doing very well in polls. Leah Vukmir has been underperforming recently. This state there used to be a possibility for this state to flip to the Republicans, very slim, but that possibility has almost entirely diminished to being non-existent, and I would call this state likely in Tammy Baldwin's column for those reasons. Just a second. Lost my place, my apologies. Indiana, I would list tilting in the Democrats' column. Donnelly has been making a comeback in polls. I do believe he is leading overall now in polls, and I think that in general he's been surprising many pundits and many commentators. This race has been listed in the past has been listed as Republicans' largest possibility of winning in 2018, but we're seeing that become less and less of a factor. And I also forgot to fill in Arizona. My apologies. I'm kind of disorganized. I've lost my place in my list. My apologies for that. But Indiana, I would list tilting in Donnelly's column. He does have an incumbent advantage, which will pay off in the state in general. But I do believe that he will hold on to the state very, very narrowly. As for Arizona, which I meant to talk more about before, I list it leaning in the Democrats' column. I do think that the odds of Kyrsten Sinema winning this state have gone down since my last prediction. Martha McSally has been making a mild comeback in polls in general. However, Kyrsten Sinema has been retaining her lead in polls. She has been retaining her lead in fundraising. And in general, I would list this state leaning in Kyrsten Sinema's column for that reason. Florida, I would list tilting in the Democrats' column, which is a big, big change from my past predictions. This state has been consistently tilting in the Republicans' column ever since Rick Scott has announced his candidacy. However, I think that Andrew Gillum in the gubernatorial race in the state is a big factor in why this state is tilting towards the Democrats now. I do think that Bill Nelson has been benefiting enormously from Andrew Gillum being the Democratic nominee, because Andrew Gillum has been reigniting Democratic turnout, and he has been turning out large. He's just been energizing the Democratic base in the state in general, and I think that Bill Nelson has been benefiting mildly off of that, and the polls reflect that. Bill Nelson has been doing very well in polls compared to where he was before, and for those reasons, I think this state could switch by November very easily. This state is very unpredictable, just like most of the states I'm listing as tilting, but currently I would list it tilting in Bill Nelson's column. Missouri is going to be very tricky to call. I think that Claire McCaskill's announcement that she is supporting, that she is not voting for Kavanaugh is going to be a big factor, and so far it has not been doing well for her. Josh Hawley has been leading in polls almost ever since she's made that announcement that she's not voting for Kavanaugh, and I think that was a mistake on her part because she has not been performing very well in polls in this state. However, I'm going to still list it tilting in the Democrats' column for the main reason that I do think that the recent sexual assault allegations against Brett Kavanaugh will give her some leeway as a result of her saying that she wouldn't vote for him. But still, I think that a number of Republicans will disapprove of her for that, and I think that Josh Hawley will get stronger Republican turnout than he would have if McCaskill didn't announce that she wasn't voting for Kavanaugh. But still, I would list this state tilting in the Democrats' column overall. Now going over to Tennessee, we've seen this state become very, very narrow in polls, but I'm going to list it tilting in the Democrats' column for the same reason I listed it tilting in my past predictions as well. Phil Bredesen is very well known throughout the state. He's won solidly in both his elections to Tennessee governor, and I think that even though the state is not nearly as Democratic friendly as it was back then when he was running, he will reignite turnout to his side, and I believe that turnout and the fact that there is an incumbent on the ticket in the state as well will lead him to victory in the state. And as you can see here, this is the first time that I've given the Democrats the victory in this prediction. And overall, I think that this is a pretty fair reflection on how things have shifted towards the Democrats' side. They've been leading consistently in a number of polls. They've been improving in a number of polls, with few exceptions. And I do think that there is a very big possibility for this to switch to the Republican side. I think the Republicans are capable of taking back Florida, taking back Missouri, and if that were the case, then the Republicans would win overall. And I think that Democrats should absolutely be worried. Don't be fooled by this prediction. Democrats should absolutely be worried, and it's unlikely that they'll maintain the same momentum in these states up until November. If they do, then it'll be fortunate for them. And then if they don't, then they will not win. But in general, Democrats should be mildly optimistic overall, I think. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed the prediction. If you guys want to see any more videos like this in the future, please leave a comment down below. And feel free to like, share, and subscribe. It's the only way for small channels like mine to grow. I know I've not been posting a whole lot recently. I've been very busy with school, with clubs, and with a variety of other things. But I will start to post more in the future. I'm just about done with my with preparing for my 2018 House of Representatives prediction. It's going to be a long video, but I think you guys will enjoy it. It's very elaborate and it's very in-depth, and I think it'll end up being a good video. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.